Welcome back to Northern Tales, where powerful stories of love, sacrifice, and change from Northern Nigeria come alive. If you're new here, subscribe and tap the notification bell so you're the first to know whenever a new story drops. Last time we followed Mairo and Farouk from the shade of mango trees in their schoolyard to the struggles of a humble marriage and the first taste of success. Their love defied wealth and status, but new seasons bring new tests. In today's episode, When Love Isn't Enough, Farouk Amiro's story part 2. Prosperity has arrived, but so have new influences. Mairo finds herself drawn into the glittering world of society women, and the harmony that once held their marriage begins to shake. Stay with us because the story is about to take a turn. The years of struggle and quiet devotion had given way to wealth, travel, and recognition. Farouk's shops flourished, and his name was spoken with respect in the markets of Kaduna and beyond. Mairo, once the girl content with a mat in a small room, now adorned herself with fine lace and gold, moving easily among the city's most celebrated women. At first, she basked in the joy of being admired as the wife of a successful man. But slowly, her friendships with wealthy society women began to shape her desires. Their conversations were filled with talk of expensive Asoebi, foreign trips, and the latest jewelry. Mairo, eager not to be left behind, started craving the same glitter. What had started as whispers of change slowly grew into silence between her and Farouk, until one evening it broke the surface in a way he never expected. Mairo came into the sitting room with a glint in her eyes and demanded 2 million naira to buy Asoebi for the wedding of her friend's son. Farouk was on the couch, scrolling through figures from his latest shipment. He looked up, stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter. He thought he was joking, but Meiro's face remained stiff, her tone sharp, almost accusing. The laughter died in his throat. The room grew heavy, silence pressing down like a storm about to break. What do you mean 2 million naira for Asoebi? Farouk asked, his voice low and angry. Meiro's eyes flashed. Do you expect me to be the only one among my friends without it? People know who you are, Farouk. They know what you have. Do you want them to laugh at me? Farouk sat up, his tone tightening. Mairo, I worked for that money. 2 million naira is not pocket change. It can restock a whole shop. Her words cut sharp, almost mocking. And what about me? Am I not worth it? You spend on your business partners in China. But when I ask, suddenly you remember how hard you work. Voices rose, echoing off the fine walls that once symbolized their triumph. The womb that had carried them through the years of poverty now felt fragile, threatened by a glittering world neither of them had prepared for. Farouk's patience snapped. He stood, fists clenched at his side, and stormed out of the house without another word. That night he did not return. Instead, he checked into a hotel, staring at the ceiling while sleep refused to come. By dawn, he was already boarding a flight to China, his briefcase in hand, his heart heavy. In between presentations and negotiations, his thoughts kept circling back to Nero. He still loved her, deeply, even helplessly, but he could no longer deny the truth. Something in their marriage had shifted. A distance had crept in, fed by his long absences and her new circle of glittering friends. And for the first time, Farouk wondered if love would be enough to bring them back. He blamed himself partly. Maybe he had been too busy. If he had nurtured the bond they once shared, things would not have reached this point. But he also knew Nero was no longer the same girl he had married, the simple, naive sweetheart who once looked at him like he was her whole world. That Nero had been content with a mat in a small room, finding joy in his dreams and their whispered plans. Now her gaze reached outward, measuring herself against women who wielded influences like armor, seasoned business moguls, wives of high ranking government officials, women who owned their own empires. Mairo, shielded from hardship and spoiled by comfort, was stepping into a league she didn't understand. trying to prove she belonged. And Farouk, watching from a distance, felt helpless. The more he built for them, the further she seemed to drift. He thought of her mother, Hajia Safia, whose scorn had once burned holes in their early marriage, but who now flaunted his wealth at every gathering. He could see her fingerprints all over Meiro's new hunger for status and validation. Yet the thought of reporting his wife to her family made him sick. What could he even say? That the woman he loved had become consumed by shallow competitions and expensive tastes? That their home was turning into a stage for her friends' applause? Lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling of that cold hotel room, he realized he needed an anchor, someone who still knew Miro's true heart. Not those society women, never them. They had only pulled her further into their world of vanity. No, it had to be someone who remembered her laughter under the mango tree, who saw the girl behind the glitter, someone who could reach her in ways he no longer could. And so, after much hesitation, Farouk picked up his phone and dialed a familiar number. His thumb hovered over the call button for what felt like forever. Finally, with a deep breath, he pressed it. He called Amina. When she answered, her voice carried the same calm dignity he remembered, though there was a distance he had not heard before. Amina, he began in a low, hesitant tone. It's me, Farouk. I need to talk to you about Mairo. There was silence on the other end. He could hear a faint rustle of fabric, the sound of children's voices in the background, before she finally spoke. Farouk, I don't know if I am the right person for that, he said flatly. Mairo and I, we don't talk anymore. The words landed like a blow. Farouk rubbed his forehead, suddenly weary. What happened? You two were inseparable, he whispered. Her sigh came through the line, heavy with unspoken memories. She changed, Farouk. The cliques, the show of wealth. She looks at me like I don't belong in her world anymore. I tried, wallahi. I tried. I cautioned her once. She told me not to, she told me to my face that I was envious. Farouk shut his eyes, his chest tightening. He could picture Mero's sharp tone, the defiance in her voice. Amina, his voice broke slightly. I am sorry on her behalf. I am truly sorry. You have always been there for us, for her, for the children. You don't deserve this. There was a pause, then Amina's voice returned softer but laced with finality. Don't apologize for her, Farouk. Sometimes people grow apart. Maybe she has chosen her path. He opened his mouth to plead, to explain, but before he could form the words, the line went dead. He had ended the call. Farouk sat frozen, phone still pressed against his ears, listening to the emptiness. In that moment, the truth weighed on him heavier than any business loss. Meru had not only drifted from him, she had pushed away the one friend who once kept her grounded. Later, on the long 14-hour flight from Beijing to Addis Ababa, Farouk stared out at the endless stretch of night sky. The hum of the engines was steady, but inside his chest there was only turbulence. His thoughts circled endlessly, refusing him to rest. He thought about his life, the boy who had once walked home with a girl under mango trees, who had promised her a future with nothing but hope in his pocket. He thought of Meru, the woman who had defied her mother's scorn and chosen him when he had nothing but a room in his father's compound. She had followed him through those lean, hungry years, carrying their love like a shield. Their story had once been one of defiance and unity, but somewhere along the journey, their paths had bent away from each other. Maybe he had been too busy, chasing contracts, counting shipments, building an empire brick by brick. Maybe she had been too lonely, filling the void of his absences with glittering friends and shallow rivalries. What was once laughter between them had thinned into polite silences and then into arguments that lingered like smoke long after the fire. And then his mind wandered to Amina. He remembered her in the compound, sitting under the neem tree, laughing with the children, her presence soft but steady. She had been Meiro's confidant once, a steadying hand through pregnancy and early motherhood. A woman who gave without demanding, who supported without seeking recognition, unlike others in his orbit. His siblings with endless lists of requests, cousins with schemes and investments, Amina had never stretched out her hand. Even when life struck her hard, she bore it quietly, wrapping her dignity around her like a shawl. He pictured her now, after all the storm she had weathered, living in her elder brother's house, her inheritance carved away in disputes, no husband by her side, her children scattered, no stability to call her own, and yet still standing, resilient, unbent. A pang of guilt struck him sharp and unexpected. How had he, with all his wealth and influence, overlooked her? How had he failed to see the quiet sacrifices, the strength that had once held Mero steady? He realized then that while he had been pouring everything into Mero, her desires, her comforts, her glittering new world, he had allowed someone like Amina to slip into the shadows, forgotten. For the first time in years, Farouk felt something stir in him that was not tied to business. No pride, no wealth. It was responsibility tinged with shame. He clenched his jaw, his eyes still fixed on the horizon beyond the small oval window. Somewhere in that dark expanse, he made up his mind. When he returned home, he would find a way to help Amina. Quietly, without fanfare, without pity. She had given too much and asked for nothing. The least he could do now was to honor her dignity with action. When Farouk returned from China, he found the house unusually loud. The sitting room glowed with chandeliers and perfume, filled with Miro's clique. Women draped in shimmering lace, their wrists heavy with gold, their laughter sharp and cutting, rising above the noise from an Indian movie. The air smelled of wealth and rivalry. 2 million is nothing, Mairo, one of them scoffed, adjusting her gele with a smirk. If your husband truly loves you, he should make you shine. Look at us. Do you see us begging? Another chimed in, her bangles jangling as she raised her glass. You carry his name, Mairo. Make him prove it. What use is a rich man if his wife looks ordinary? Farouk froze at the doorway, his jaw tightening, blood pounding in his ears. He watched Miro laugh along, her voice carrying above the chatter, sweet and carefree, like she belonged more to them than to him. She didn't even notice him standing there. For a brief, dangerous moment, he wanted to walk out and never return. Later that night, when the guests had gone, the house was finally silent. He confronted her. Mairo, his voice cracked with like thunder, startling even himself. Do you even hear yourself these days? 2 million for Asoebi. Is that what our marriage has come to? He glared at her, shaking his head. And now I hear you sit with strangers, pouring out our private matters like it's market gossip. Is nothing sacred to you anymore? Nero's chin lifted, defiance flashing in her eyes. They are not strangers, Farouk. They are my friends. At least they listen. At least they understand. You wouldn't know because you're never here. She rolled her eyes with practiced defiance. Farouk, don't embarrass me. These women, they live the kind of life I deserve. I can't be the only one left behind, looking small while their husbands spoil them. Her words were like knives, each one cutting deeper. Farouk's throat burned as he stepped closer. You're not left behind, Mairo, he said bitterly, his voice low and trembling. You are losing yourself. The girl I married, she's gone. And all I see now is a stranger laughing with people who don't care about her, while everything we built together crumbles. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The silence between them was louder than the party had been hours before. Farouk's was cut deep, but Mero was not one to back down. Crumbles? She spat, folding her arms. What is crumbling here, Farouk? This house? Your shops? Or is it your pride because your wife dares to want more than scraps? Scraps? His voice thundered now, his patience gone. Everything you see, every naira, every brick of this house, I bled for it. I broke my back to build this life for us, Mero. And now you stand here belittling it because your friends told you 2 million is nothing. Mero's lips curled into a mocking smile. They don't just tell me, Farouk, they show me. Look at how they live. Look at their houses, their cars, the way their husbands spoil them. And you hide in your business trips and bring me excuses. Excuses? He stepped forward, his eyes blazing. You think this is about money? You think being a wife is about parading lace and diamonds? You have really changed, Mairo. The girl who once swore she would live with me on a mat, if that's all I had. Where is she? But Mairo only turned away, muttering, that girl grew up. The silence after those words were deafening. Farouk left the room before the anger in him turned into something worse. That night, unable to sleep, he scrolled through his phone and found Amina's number again. His thumb hovered, but the desperation in his chest left him no trace. When she answered, his voice broke. Amina, please. I can't reach her. I don't know what else to do. She listens to no one, but maybe she will hear you. I beg you, don't let her slip away from me. There was a long pause on the other end. So long he thought she might have hung up again. Finally, her voice came soft, but waited. Farouk, I would think about it. I don't want to force myself where I'm not wanted. But for the sake of what we once had, I will think about it. For the first time in days, he let out a shaky breath. Thank you, Amina. That's all I ask. 2 days later, Amina came to visit unexpectedly. Farouk was in the courtyard when he saw her modest figure approach. Her Ankara wrapper trailing dust, relief washed over him like cool water on a burning wound. Inside the house, Meiro's face hardened the moment she saw her. Mairo, Amina greeted politely, lowering her eyes. I only came to greet. I don't want trouble. Mairo smirked, her tone sharp as a blade. Good, because this is my home, Amina. Don't come here trying to teach me how to live. Before the tension could thicken further, Farouk's voice cut in sharp and protective. Enough, Mairo. She's family. If anyone has earned respect in this house, it's Amina. The room fell into silence. The air was thick with unspoken words. Mairo turned to him slowly, her eyes narrowing, her voice cold as steel. Oh, so now she's the one you defend against me. Farouk opened his mouth to respond, but the damage was already done. It was the spark that would light the next fire, one that neither wealth nor silence could extinguish. When Amina finally rose to leave, Farouk insisted on walking her out. The tension inside still burned, but out in the quiet night air, he felt only shame. As he drove her home, his words tumbled into a stream of apologies. Apologies for Meiro's sharp tongue, for the distance that had grown between them, for dragging her into their storm. Amina said little, only nodding now and then, her calm silence more powerful than any rebuke. By the time they reached her gate, Farouk's voice had grown hoarse, but his attitude was but his gratitude was clear in his eyes. When Farouk returned home, dinner was served to him by the maid, not by Meiro. He ate quietly, retired to his own wing, and waited. By 10 p.m., he realized she had no intention of coming to him. With a heavy sigh, he rose and crossed to her section. He found her sitting in the living room with their children, the glow of a Hausa movie flickering across their faces. Laughter echoed from the screen, but the air between them was tense. Farouk glanced at his watch and frowned. What are you children still doing awake at this hour? He barked. The children scattered quickly, scurrying off to bed, leaving only Mero behind. Assalamu alaikum, he said, trying to soften his tone. She murmured something too low for him to catch, eyes still fixed on the screen. He felt a flash of anger rise, but forced himself to breathe, lowering himself into a chair opposite her. We need to talk, he said firmly. You go first. Mero turned, her voice rising immediately. Farouk, you surprised me. He raised his hands, cutting her off. I said talk, not shout. If you want to shout, I will leave. When you're ready to talk, I will come back. Something in his calmness made her lower her voice, though the anger still burned in her eyes. She began pouring out her frustration. She spoke of the disgrace he's causing her, how among her friends she's the only one without the Asoebi. She confessed she had lied, telling them his account was hacked and frozen just to save face. She listed the contributions, the gifts of gold, the lavish displays of wealth her friends had made, while she, the wife of a wealthy man, sat empty-handed. For 30 minutes she vented, words tumbling over each other like a flood. Farouk sat in silence, listening, his face unreadable. When she finally ran out of steam, her breathing sharp and uneven, he spoke quietly. Are you finished? He asked. Yes, he said, folding her arms. Whose child did you say is getting married again? He asked her. She glared at him. Hajia Kudira's son, don't you know her? Farouk gave a small smile. Of course I know her. The owner of Kudira Transport, the sole distributor of plastic chairs and tables in this town. Mairo nodded impatiently. Yes, that's her. Then it makes sense, Farouk said calmly. To her, 2 million for Asoebi is nothing. In fact, it's modest. She can afford it because she runs empires in her own right. But you, Mairo, his voice softened, almost pleading. You don't earn a single naira. You don't run a business. You don't manage an empire. How can you compare yourself with women whose entire lives revolve around industries worth millions? What are you trying to prove? Mairo's face flickered with confusion, but he pressed on. Allah has blessed us, yes. But understand I am a businessman. I can spend, but I must calculate. Do you know how reckless it is to throw away 2 million naira for clothes you will wear once just to prove a point? For the son of a woman old enough to be your mother, is that what we have become? Slaves to appearances? He leaned back, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Mero, please, reconsider the company you keep. Stay where Allah has placed you. Don't let other people's vanity rob you of your peace or our home. At that moment, Mero shot up from her seat, her face flushed with rage. Her voice cracked through the quiet like a whip. What do you mean, Farouk? What do you mean? Do I know how much you dash your girlfriends outside? Am I not your wife? Farouk froze, his expression stunned, as if the air had been punched out of him. He had never in 15 years had Miro speak to him this way. His anger flared hot in his chest, but beneath it was something colder, shame. He thought of their children in the next room, their little ears pressed to the wall, hearing their mother fling such accusations. His jaw tightened. He could barely trust himself to speak. He rose slowly from his chair, his silence more terrifying than any outburst. Is it not true? Mero screamed after him, her voice ringing through the walls. Where are you going? Come back now. Farouk, Farouk, I am talking to you. But he did not turn back. He moved swiftly down the hallway, his stride purposeful, his heart pounding. For the first time since they had built a home together, he entered his room and turned the key behind him. The metallic click echoed in his ears, a sound that carried more weight than all their arguments before. For the first time in their marriage, he was locking her out. In the morning, Farouk rose early, as was his habit whenever he was home. The house felt strangely heavy. Mero never came out of her room. She left everything to the maid and the cook, who quietly prepared the children for school. Farouk watched as his little ones buttoned their uniforms and strapped on their shoes, the innocence of their chatter cutting through the tension that still lingered from the night before. He drove them to school in silence, his thoughts tangled, his heart heavy. As they spilled out of the car, one after another, his third child, a girl named Ramatu, fondly called Gogo after his beloved aunt, suddenly turned back. She ran to him and wrapped her tiny arms around his legs. Farouk bent down, meeting her bright eyes at her level. She clutched his neck with her small hands and whispered with disarming honesty, Baba, are you still fighting with Mama? The words pierced him like a blade. For a moment, he could not speak. A hot sting gathered in his eyes, and a single tear slid to the corner before he could wipe it away. No child, he thought bitterly, no child should have to ask such a question. He remembered his own childhood. His parents never raised their voices at each other, never let their quarrels spill into the ears of their children. He felt a painful tug deep in his chest, as though his heart itself was being wrung. At that moment, Farouk knew he could not allow this poison to seep further into his home. Whatever it took, he had to solve it today. He pulled Gogo close, hugging her tightly, breathing in her innocence. Then he kissed her forehead gently. "Don't worry, my baby," he said softly, forcing steadiness into his voice. "We're not fighting anymore. Everything will be fine. You will see when you come back from school." She nodded, satisfied with his promise, before skipping back to join her siblings. Farouk remained crouched by the car for a moment longer, his heart aching with both love and resolve. He had planned to head straight to his business after robbing the children, but the encounter with Gogo lingered in his chest like a knot. Instead, he turned the car around and drove home. His mind said, whatever was breaking his marriage, he would face it today. Farouk parked the car outside the house, his jaw clenched with determination. As he walked through the quiet sitting room, the muffled sound of voices drifted from Meiro's chamber. He froze, straining to listen. One voice was Meiro's, but the other, a woman's voice he did not recognize. His hand hovered at the door, his heart pounded. What was his wife hiding, and who was she confiding in? And that is where we end today's chapter of When Love Isn't Enough, Farouk and Meiro's story. Love, loyalty, and betrayal are colliding in ways neither Farouk nor Meiro ever imagined. But what happens when truth is no longer whispered, when it explodes in the open? Join us next time for part 3 as the cracks in their marriage grow deeper and choices are made that can never be undone. If you have been moved by today's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Northern Tales. Until next time, stay with us as we tell stories that linger in every Northern home.